Hello, everyone. My name is Tiffany. I'm the Tipsy Artist, and I always like to come in and say hello in person before I start to teach, if I'm looking halfway decent. So I am halfway decent today. I'm going to go ahead and show you the project we're working on. So today we'll be doing this lovely tutorial. So it is a red tree, and you can do it without the hearts or with the hearts. So obviously, if it's a little more of a love centerpiece or Valentine centerpiece, you can keep the hearts in, or if you want it to be more fall, then you can leave the hearts out. So a couple of options there for you. I'm going to go ahead and place this off to the side. And then you can do this on canvas. We have a couple of different kits. We've got the on canvas kit, which is always, right now, our kits always have a 9x12. And then, but always check the website, tipsyartist.com, to just make sure, check me on that, because sometimes I do make changes in the kits. I also have totes, which are really great. They're on canvas, they're very big like this. And you can also paint on that. So either way, we have all the supplies for you. And I'm going to give you a quick little overview of that. So we've always got, this is a little example of the supplies. There are 3 brushes in here, and a pencil and a permanent marker, little blowout, I think is what they call them, where you can be obnoxious and kind of go, whatever. And that's my little rendition of that. And then some little washi tape that helps you secure the image to the surface before you start to trace. And then we've got your paint. So in the box, it looks like this. All right, so, and we've got the paper plates, the paint, the napkins, the apron, basically everything. So, I do this a lot for corporate gatherings too, and I make it to where they don't have to run and get a bunch of supplies. The only thing you do have to get that I can't ship to you is the water. So I do recommend that as you get everything set up, you go ahead and get your water out in some sort of cup or something like that. And then everything else you should have in your kit with you. And then one other little helpful hint. Now I do have the washi tape, which is a loose fit, a little bit of sticky to it, but it is very easy to lift off. Sometimes people prefer a little bit more of a fixed grab with that. So Scotch tape is your buddy on that. So if you do want to get your own Scotch tape, you can, but I do have the washi tape for you. So, all right. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get started with the painting process. So I'm going to say bye from FaceTime here, and then we're going to shift over to a wonderful aerial shot down here. And then, by the way, this is my studio. So as you look around, this is where I work on all my fine art and all of the lovely paintings that I do for y'all's class. So, all right, so here we go. I'm gonna switch over and USB. Okay, awesome. All right, so if you are doing, I've got it all set up here. We're about ready to trace, so we're going to go through that process step by step. And then your kit also comes with this that holds all your instructions and everything. And I'll get to this here in a minute, but in case I forget, I will try not to, but in case I forget, if you are doing the tote bag project, you'll want to save this, use this, pull it out. And in between the tote bag, you'll want to slide this in underneath where you paint. So it'll keep the paint from bleeding through. That is a very important tip. So you want to go ahead and slide that in now and make sure that's in. That'll help protect. And that is for the tote bag, people, if you're doing that. If you are doing the canvas, then we're set up here. Now, helpful hints on the transfer paper. Looks like this. It's got a very dark, shiny black side, then it's got the dull gray side. You always want to make sure that the dull gray side is facing up, and then the black shiny side, which is what transfers the image over, you want to make sure that's facing your canvas here. Then I've got my line art placed here on top. I just tape up at the top here, here, and here. I leave all the sides free and open so that I can constantly check my work and make sure that I am getting everything done. Because once you lift this off, you will not be able to go back and match up line to line. So you want to make sure you get it all, double check really well, and then go ahead and remove this. All right, so we're set up here. I'm going to go ahead and start with the pencil. All right, so very simple. And honestly, I did this extra texture just to give you an idea of reference of texture, but you really don't need that. You can honestly just, if you want to, you can. You can certainly be kind of an overachiever. I'm just going to do kind of a squiggly line because more than anything, it's just a reference around the tree shape. So you can just make this line all the way around. That's all going to get covered up with paint in the morning. Oops, I'll be good back with it. A couple little branches in there. I'll go ahead and grab those. All right, and I'm definitely going to go ahead and do the hearts on this one. All right, let's check the work. All right, so I think that looks really good. Now, that's very hard for y'all to see because it's so subtle. So I'm going to pull this closer. So you can see I've done all the work here. So I am good to go. I'm going to go ahead and lift this off. Other little helpful hints if you're using the kit with me, transfer paper. You can actually turn this in a different direction and reuse this on another project. If you're kind of thrifty and like to do stuff like that, you don't have to throw it away. I'm going to trash mine since I don't like to do that. Or I just have a ton of it. All right, so this is ready now. Couple of different options here. If you like the softer hand, you can go ahead and leave it just like this. I like to go ahead and do the permanent marker. You see it better in the monitor camera. Also, for beginners, it really helps you be a little bit more free and loose. You don't have to worry about losing your trace because it will bleed through a little bit. And then I can also tell you how to cover it up. So it's a nice way to keep your trace intact for beginners. So I'm going to go ahead and do a hard line around my work here. Very nice. Very nice. Okay. Place this off to the side. All right, so I've got, again, water, paint nearby. I've done a little bit of a preload here on my paint plate. And we're going to go ahead and get started. So in this particular project, if you're working on the canvas, you're just painting the tree itself. If you are, because the canvas has a nice, really pretty cream color, and you can just, you don't want to paint on that. You just want to paint on the object itself. So, but if you are working on your canvas project here and you want to have, you can do a custom color if you want. The kit has all kinds of color mixing instructions with it to where you can customize that, or you can even just paint white on it. Where it is primed, you can also just leave it, you know, as it is, primed in white. But I do recommend having a little bit of texture on there. So if you are doing the canvas project, I would recommend doing a little bit of white. I'm going to do a little example here in a moment. Actually, I'm getting ahead of myself, so I'm going to go and talk about brush prep here. So place these little guys off to the side. So I've got my napkins, I've got my brushes. Let's introduce our little family here. So we have Mama, then we have little Betty, then we have little Bit. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go ahead, and your brushes, mine are a little bit loved and used. Yours should be new. So you want to go ahead and place them into the water just a little bit to make sure that they're flexible and just a little bit moist. I'm going to do a little bit of a dab here on my napkin. And then this is my titanium white, which is right here. And if you're using your paints for the first time, when you go to lift this off here with the cap, you're going to see a little silver lining there. That's going to help protect it. You're going to have to lift that off to go ahead and let the paint come out. Every time you're done using this, you want to go ahead and recap. Acrylic paint can set up and dry very quickly. It can also dry in your tube. So always use that cap to protect your paint. And these paints will last a long time. And many times I can get a lot more than one painting out of your little kit here that I showed you in the beginning, which looks like this. So lovely. All right. So, okay, cross stroke here on the background. You can just swish the paint back and forth like this. Looks like you make a little letter X back and forth. So this is for canvas users, and I'm going to bring this a little bit closer so you can see how that does create a nice little sheen and nice, beautiful texture over the surface area. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and rinse out here. We're going to go ahead and start with the actual tree base here. And so I will be using, let's use our little buddy brush here. So we're going to mix up a nice little bit of light gray. So I'm going to take my brush and I'm going to pick up some of that white, little touch of the black. This is Mars black and white. I'm going to mix those two together. And you can have shades of darker charcoal gray and lighter gray here. Do a firm press into the paint after I mix. Check our edge, make sure it's nice and thin, because we'll use this to go ahead and do the edge work here. Now there's a little bit of dry brush that happens here. So you get this peekaboo. I want to bring that closer. See the peekaboo, the canvas coming through. Now, what's nice about having the canvas flat is that you don't have to worry about water runs as much. So I can add a little bit of water here to the paint. And that will really help. See how that just immediately solved that problem, and that little bit of water really helped all of that paint just flow into every pore of the canvas. So adding a little bit of water really helps. So you can use your little Betty brush. I call this little Betty. We're going to go ahead and get a nice thick color. There's some solid color here. And we're going to start to do little bits of branches that'll come up. That looks like you make a letter V up in here. Several of those. Nice space. All right, let's rinse out, dry off. Now we're going to use a little bit. This is the smallest brush we've got. We're going to add a little bit of water. We're going to just dry off just a little bit. Just make it nice and moist. Now I'm going to go back into that same color here. You can make a few more little branches. A lot of these end up getting covered by the paint, but you still want that skeletal structure of the tree kind of peeking through in the background. Add a little bit more water, darker shades of that charcoal gray. All right, now we're going to start to add some texture into the base of the tree. So again, a little bit of water, a little bit more of the white this time. We want those lighter shades of that gray. And we're just going to kind of echo that same basic shape here and just follow it up. Almost like making long vertical stripes in here. But more dramatic with the little bits of white. Back in with more of that gray, gonna make it a bit more subtle. Cheers. Got a little bit of water so we can get total saturation in there. All right, very pretty. All right, let's go ahead and rinse out. Okay, now we're going to start to do this really nice little pounce effect to get that first layer of color here in our background. So in your kit, we've got some beautiful colors here. We've got some primary magenta and some cadmium red here. Just going to turn my little palette plate just a little bit. Let's go ahead and squirt out a little bit of this. This is my cadmium red. And then we have the primary magenta. I'm going to get a little bit more of that red since we're using quite a bit of that. Let's do one more over here. All right. So we're going to go ahead and start with the dark first. And I'm going to add a very tiny amount. I'm going to use a mama brush, by the way, super tiny amount of the black. I just barely touch the corner of the brush into the black. We're going to push it into that cadmium red just a little bit, see how it darkens it up. We're going to grab a little bit of that primary magenta as well. So it's starting to become quite a bit darker here. Let's grab a little bit more black. Really darken that up. And then we're going to start to just tap on the side of the brush. Let that brush do the work for you. Get that nice texture. And we're going over those branches. Just tap. This is going to be our first layer. Add a little bit of water to help extend that paint a little bit more. Again, just light taps. This is very therapeutic. You can tap a little bit harder if you've had a particularly stressful day. It's a nice release, good way to be in the present moment. And just continue this all over the surface here. And I'm gonna bring it a little bit closer, but you can see how you're getting some really nice texture in there. And every once in a while too, you can actually grab a little bit of that pure color, like either the primary magenta or the cadmium red, whichever one you want to serve it more. Like alternate that in there. Also got a little bit of some pure black. That's okay too. Nice little shadow in the background. It's okay to have it vary a little bit and not be all exactly the same color. So it kind of varies between light and dark a little bit. And as you get towards the outer edges, you want to just kind of lift off on your pressure, make it very, very light-handed. And let a little bit of that end of the brush kind of do some nice little tiny pounces where it's a little bit more textural. And don't be scared of how dark it is, because this is just the first layer. And we are going to come in with more of those really beautiful brights over the top. Change directions here. I'm going to keep my painting in the upright position. However, sometimes it's easier to turn the canvas, like give you a little visual. So it might be easier for you to turn it to actually go in your natural state, of how you would move. To do that, I'm going to go ahead and turn this back. All right, so we have our beautiful first layer done. That's wonderful. Okay, so we can go ahead and rinse out here. And then dry off. And then I'm going to, got a lot of cadmium red still left, but I definitely need a lot more of my primary magenta. I'm going to get a lot and be very liberal with it. Okay, so now cleaned off my mama brush. Let's go over that one more time too. I think I did it without explaining it, just in case. So clean a brush. You want to go ahead and place it into your bucket of water here. Nice firm pressure, spin it round and round and round. That helps release the paint from the brush. Keep checking it until it is completely clear. Also do a little check here on your napkin. And then voila, you are good to go. All right. So still using the Mama for the bigger sections here. So I'm going to come in with a little bit of white with my primary magenta. I'm going to lighten it up a little bit. So pretty. And it's kind of our next layer here. So we can start to pounce in. See, now you're like, oh my gosh, love it. That is becoming magical. Magical. I'm just kind of all over. Tap, tap, tap. Add a little bit more white here to the primary magenta. Just going to tap all over. And every time I do this paint, it is different because I just have fun with it. And so it varies in terms of, you know, sometimes where the reds are, more concentration of pink or whatever. And so allow yourself to have that freedom. You don't have to be concerned about, oh my goodness, it's not looking just like hers. It's fine. Mine is not looking just like mine either. It's okay. Lighter tap in there. All right, so that's our next layer. Isn't that beautiful? I love it. You see places where you want a little bit more pop pink. You know, but then of course you can always come back in more later too. All right, now let's rinse out. And then still using Mama, I'm going to go ahead and start in with more of this Cadmium Red, just in a pure state. And just tap, tap, tap over the surface. I'm just going to all over. You don't have to completely cover every area because you still want pink peeking through quite a bit, but just kind of generally all over. And now keep in mind, I still have some of these lines showing through, so I will make sure that we cover those up. So I'm going to kind of do another layer of paint over the top, just in case, just to get good coverage over that. And you notice I keep going back in and loading up the brush nicely to where there's a nice little thick pea-size amount of paint on the tip, and then that will give you some really nice texture. It just kind of lays nicely on top of the surface area. All right, really beautiful. Now we're going to start to bring in a little bit of those lighter highlights in there. So I'm going to grab a little bit more of this cadmium red. And I still have quite a bit of the primary magenta, so I'm going to grab a little bit of that, mix those two together, and then a little bit of white. So this almost gives me a little bit of a coral feeling. This is going to be really pretty. So we can start to place that in over the top. Tap, tap, tap. So pretty and so easy. This is such a therapeutic, beautiful painting to do. Let the brush do the work with all that texture. So easy. You don't have to worry about precisely painting little tiny leaves or anything. You're just tapping and letting the brush do the work for you. So nice. We've got all these beautiful colors kind of peeking through. We've got our dark base. And then we have our cadmium red, and we have our primary magenta. Little moments of crimson because our red mixed with our black. And now we have those beautiful highlights and coral coming in over the top. So, so sweet. Well, I'm going to do a little bit of coral here too. Tap, tap, tap. Right. Love it. Okay, let's go ahead and rinse out. Now let's go back in with our little bit brush, and we're going to do some pink and white. I'm sorry, primary magenta and white. Let's show the plate. Let's do that. So I've got I'm going to hold it like a pencil. Let's go ahead and just a nice little rounded shape. Apply some firm pressure, help those bristles kind of spread out into that shape there. I'm gonna add a little bit of white too as I go. Oh, it's a little too much white. Blend that in there a little bit. Let's push that white in there. Now, gentle hand, lay that brush over to the side. We kind of go up in a little hill, around to the corner there. And then turn that brush a little bit more over to the side, and add a little bit of white. A little bit of white on this side too, a little bit of a push with the bristles and then pull down. And push and pull down. You can hear that push and pull down. hold it with the pencil, do a little curve. Pull that down to the base. The white, push in. All right, I love it, so pretty. Okay, a little, you can do tiny little dots of white now too, if you want, with your little bit brush, just kind of tap, 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 a few of those in there. A little bit more sparing with the white. Those are just little tiny accents here and there. And they're mostly on this side of the tree. And we are done, and it is gorgeous. Very simple, very easy. All right. So I also typically do a little signature here. So I'm just gonna sign it just like that. And you're all set. It's beautiful. All right, so again, for all the supplies here, everything you need, it can be found at tipsyartist.com. I'll be sure to provide a link with you below. And we're so glad you joined us here today, and please give us a follow. And we look forward to seeing y'all again very, very soon. Love y'all. Toodles.